also look at the psychosocial dimension of it, the psychosocial support that is needed for disaster risk management. So it's not only about those processes, but in terms of how people are affected, the support mechanism. All right?
Sometimes overlooked. The psychosocial component
Yes.
of, how disasters impact people is overlooked. Sometimes we only think of, oh, I would have lost the physical. So I would have lost my roof. I would have lost a loved one. Maybe I would have lost my crops and things like that. But how has it affected people mentally? When people are socially displaced and so on, sometimes that impact is harder than just losing a house. Because you lose a house, you probably can build another house.
Yeah.
But people go through depression.
Yeah.
The grief from loss, the social displacement, feeling, that you are not in some way connected to your environment because you've been so traumatized.
Yeah. And that's why there's going to be more in the lesson and more in the modules in terms of development. But development is tied to people in society. All right? That's what development is. And so we will get into that also in other lessons. But that is a very, very important point. And I'm really happy that you drew attention to it more, even earlier in the process here. That, you see, when the disaster hits, if a disaster were to hit, a hazard were to become a disaster, people are affected differently. Now, sometimes we measure that in terms of the physical, what we see and how things appear, and we will say, you know what? Oh, they're not seriously damaged compared to others, but people are affected differently. Because people are vulnerable, there are different vulnerabilities. We have different vulnerabilities. And so, long after we would have probably recovered, there's probably a dimension of it that we don't take into consideration, long-lasting effect because of that social impact, that psychological impact that it has. That it takes the recovery time is not about loss of property. It's loss of human life, and then you move on because you say, hey, well, other people lose their lives. But it can take a lifetime to recover from it. Mm-hmm. And so without that support, it's very difficult. And that is why capacity now has to be that network, that support mechanism to each other. It's a community that we're talking about. It's all of us. You see, there is the justification for social equity, that if something in one aspect of society is affected, or if there's a problem in society, one part of the society or one interest group, all of society is affected. All right? We're all affected by it. Mm-hmm. So that is why we need to work together. Collective action. This is social policy. And we work together and give support. And that's comes down to really the main purpose of this education program.
Yes.
We want to mainstream it in schools through the various intragenerational, to have intragenerational equity. And also to future generations is intergenerational. But we also want to mainstream it at all levels of the education system, but also take it into our communities. And children are ambassadors to their parents and their communities. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that is a good way to approach it. But we need to get everyone involved in this. So yeah, that's a great question. I'm happy to elaborate on that. So then we look at disaster management systems. What kind of management systems do we have? Or can we use? Or how do we structure those systems? Because let's say an organization. There's a lot of talk about leadership and leadership. But what I find is sometimes organizations don't even have basic management systems. So we need to look at the structure of it, the organization, and those systems that are important. Yes, leadership is fantastic, but we have to have some structure to what we're doing so that we build sustainability. Because if that leader is not there, what happens to the organization? All right, we need systems.
Apart.
Yeah. So so we need those systems, and there are a number of them, which we will deliver in the training.